Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. It's a beautiful morning today. It's going to actually be a pretty hot day, so we're out here pretty early in the morning today. And I was out here just doing my morning walk pretty much every morning. I try to do a walk around my garden and just see how everything's doing, see if there's anything that needs to be addressed. And honestly, I just do it mostly because I just like to be in the garden in the morning. So one thing I've been checking for lately, because I knew it was coming, was squash bug eggs. Now, I have a fair amount of zucchinis and squash growing in my garden here, and it's pretty much almost inevitable if you're going to grow those kind of plants that at some point in the season you're probably going to have to deal with squash bugs to some extent or another. So in the past, I don't grow that many zucchini or squash plants, so in the past I haven't gotten that many squash bugs, and usually really how I address it is just you want to check the underside of your squash leaves, and you'll find, if you have squash bug eggs, you'll find little clusters of copper colored eggs. I'll put a little picture up on the screen here for you. And what I usually do is I usually just squash them. I'll usually either just leave them on the leaf and squash them right in the leaf, or else I'll try to peel the eggs off and then squish them when they're off the plant. But this year I seem to have more than usual. So I came out here and I was in the middle of squishing squash bug eggs, and then I realized that I haven't done a video in a few days, and maybe you guys would like to come hang out in the garden and help me hunt for squash bugs. So there's a few clusters of eggs that I found. I'm just going to show you guys what they look like, and then we'll go about removing them. So you can see this big zucchini plant here. Some of these leaves look a little bit messed with, and that's because you can see where these little tears are. I was removing clusters of squash bugs eggs from these leaves. So what you're going to want to do is check underneath each leaf, because the squash bugs like to lay their eggs there. I see one back here that's got a cluster. So you can see these eggs right here on the underside of the squash leaf. So you just want to look under each leaf, and when you find these, you want to remove them. So it kind of goes without saying that if you can find the eggs before they hatch and kill the squash bugs before they hatch and have a chance to nibble on your plants, they are not going to do the kind of damage that they will if you let them hatch. Now, you saw that little cluster of eggs there. There are many clusters of eggs just like that spread throughout my zucchini plants, and if I missed those, if I just let them go, that would hatch into lots of little really hungry squash bug larvae, and they would really go to town on my squash. So I really like to catch them before they hatch if possible. So we're going to go through and we're going to find all those today. Now, just a note though, if you do miss some eggs and some of the squash bugs hatch, I have found that if you get them right away while they're still really tiny, you can spray them with a solution of soapy water. You don't want to use antibacterial soap because that can harm your plants, but just like a regular dish soap or something like that. If you spray them with that, what happens is it suffocates them. Basically, the soap breaks down the protective layer that the bugs have, and the water just suffocates them. So I found that that is pretty effective if you do it while they're really little. But even better than that is to catch them before they hatch, so that's what we're going to do today. So here's our little cluster of eggs that we found. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of times what I do is just kind of scrape these eggs off and then crush them once they're off the plant. Since we have quite a few clusters of eggs today, though, I'm going to try out a little trick that I've heard about. I've never tried myself. I have here some packing tape. People say if you take the packing tape and stick it to the eggs, you can peel the eggs off without damaging the leaf. So we're going to give that a try, and we'll find out together if this really works. Right, so there's our little cluster of eggs. I'm just going to try sticking the tape to the eggs. And okay, that didn't work. Let's try sticking it on a little bit harder. So that got about half of them. I don't know if it's just that these eggs are in a bad spot. Maybe my tape isn't strong enough. Doesn't really seem to be working all that well. We got about half of them, so we're going to squish these that we got, and then I'll manually remove these others here. So I'm just going to take this tape, I'm going to fold it in half with the eggs inside, and I don't know if the sound of popping eggs grosses you out. It's not the greatest sound, but those eggs are neutralized there. All right, so I'm just going to have to manually remove the rest of these. Now, the reason that I wanted to try the duct tape was because I find when I remove the eggs by hand, I usually end up damaging the leaf a little bit. Not that bad. It's a lot less damage than what the squash bugs would do, but I figured if I could avoid that, I might as well do it. So we're just going to go in and look through these other leaves here. There's another cluster of eggs. That one looks like it's maybe in a more accessible spot, so I'm going to try the packing tape on this cluster again and see if it works better this time. So let's try it again and see if it works any better for us. I'm going to really make sure that it's attached there. That worked a little better. I don't know if you can see that. That got the majority of them. Let's see if we can get the rest. Okay, I got them all. So we're going to crush these. Don't mind my green fingernails. I've been scraping squash bugs eggs off of my squash leaves this morning, and I've got little bits of leaf under my nails. So, all right, so some more eggs are neutralized. So I'm gonna say the packing tape trick, it probably does work fairly well. I'm not gonna say that it's foolproof. You'll probably still have to go in and get a few manually, but that seemed to work pretty well as long as it wasn't right in kind of the corner, like the crevice of the leaf. So we'll go through. I think there's probably a few more egg clusters, so we'll see if we can find some more and get rid of them and preserve our squash harvest. Okay, and while the eggs are normally on the leaves, see if I can get that camera to focus, you can see here we have some on the stem as well. So you just want to check pretty thoroughly and make sure you get all of those. So our first zucchini plant is all clear of squash bugs, at least as far as I could see. We're going to move on to the second one here. And I just wanted to mention, this is clearly a manual control. It's probably a little more labor intensive than any kind of chemical pest control you could find. But I think that it's really worth the extra work because honestly, one of the reasons that we like to grow so much of our own food, as much of our food as we can, is because we want to avoid all those sprays and pesticides and really toxic chemicals that you can find on conventionally grown produce. And honestly, even organic produce from the store, well, I think it's probably a better option, is still not going to be perfect. The produce that I grow in my garden is almost completely no spray. On the rare occasion, I will use some sort of organic pest control depending on the situation. But honestly, I prefer to avoid even that if I can. So really coming out, so you can see there's a little cluster of squash bug eggs right here. Coming out and doing this really only takes a few minutes, and this way we get to enjoy delicious, completely non-toxic homegrown zucchini. I think it's definitely worth it. All right, go ahead and grab this little cluster of eggs here. So on this leaf here, you can see that we have a couple different colors of squash bug eggs. We've got the dark ones here and lighter ones here. Now, I am guessing, and if anyone knows for sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing that the darker ones are probably closer to hatching. These were probably laid more recently. So either way, we're going to remove both of these and make sure that they do not pester our plants. So I went all through my garden with my little handy roll of packing tape, and we got rid of all the squash bug eggs I could find. Now, one other thing that I wanted to note, this first bed here that we started with, every single zucchini plant in that bed did have squash bug eggs in varying amounts. But I have zucchini spread in other parts of my garden, and I didn't find a single squash bug egg cluster on any of the other zucchinis. So that just kind of, I think, speaks to the importance of not planting a monoculture where you have all of your plants that are all the same right together rather than kind of mixing them up. And the fact that I mixed them up really did help a lot of my squash. So the squash bugs found this bed of zucchini here, and they laid their eggs on every zucchini plant in this bed. But I have, I think, 4 or 5 other zucchini plants throughout this garden, and not a single one of those had any squash bug eggs on them. So honestly, the pests are probably going to find your plants eventually, even if you spread them out a little bit. But there's really no reason to make it any easier for them than we need to. So just for that reason, I like to interplant a variety of vegetables, and I find that it does help. So if you have fought squash bugs in your garden, especially if you have beaten them, let me know your tips and tricks for getting rid of them. If you have done the packing tape egg removal trick, does that work for you? Let me know. I know duct tape is a little bit stickier. I considered using that, but it seemed like it might also damage the leaves a little more, which I was trying to avoid. So that's why I went with packing tape. But if you've tried duct tape or any other type of tape, I'm curious to hear your results. Or if you have any other tried and true methods for managing squash bugs. I'd just love to hear what you do in your garden. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope you enjoyed this short little walk through my zucchini patch, and I can't wait to see you soon. I'll see you next time.